you've been seeing the things that these guys say. We look forward to getting your read on that. I suppose we'll start with Tank and Amari. Do you think both will be playing somewhere else?
All I can say right now is that I'm starting to get the inclination that we're in for an interesting February and March in terms of those types of decisions. If you're putting me on the spot, I feel confident saying I would guess one of those guys is gone, and I don't think it's out of the question that they both are. That's just sort of the inkling that you start to get when you're around league types and having conversations with people who know things. Again, it's early, but then again, like for this to be the first event of the off season, and you're already starting to hear that chatter. I think March could be interesting for this team.
David, when you had a chance to visit with both Steven and then Jerry, which one did you feel like gave you the clearer path of what's going to happen with this coaching staff? Did either one of them kind of give you a little bit like, oh, this thing's staying, or, hey, there might be some changes? Was there one kind of read you got from these guys?
Well, and it would be Jerry Jones, and I think, Brian, you all know, like Jerry's a little more willing to give you something
right.
To raise your eyebrows a little bit. So two interesting things happened. I asked Jerry Jones about the coaching staff and when he thought it would be finalized. And basically he said, other than Kellen Moore, he was like, well, I'll tell you what I said last week on the radio with y'all he's like, I've got all the coaches under contract that I want under contract. And I guess things could change, but I didn't really get the impression that they were planning on shaking things up. I think it's really more of a matter of waiting out the things that are beyond their control. Kellen Moore's still technically a candidate for the Miami job. Some of his other coaches have interviewed for coordinator jobs. So he made it sound like the only changes might be guys getting hired away. I didn't get the impression that they were planning any other kind of grand changes. And then in the same breath, really the big thing that I wrote about coming out of the week was Jerry. I mean, it was an interesting sequence. I would love for you to go read the story on DallasCowboys.com because there's a lot to unpack. But basically, Jerry was talking about how he tried to keep Dan Quinn by playing up the idea that people want to coach the Dallas Cowboys, and maybe Dan Quinn would want to be the coach of the Dallas Cowboys. And if that is not a eyebrow-raising statement, what is, right? And Jory Epstein, our friend over at USA Today, and we were kind of going back and forth with Jerry, like, well, what exactly are you saying here? Like, I mean, is Dan Quinn somebody that you would consider? And he said, yeah, if I needed a coach, I would absolutely consider Dan Quinn. And that turns into, well, what does Mike McCarthy think about this? And it was basically, well, it'll be fine. You don't mind. He knows he's not going to be the coach of the Cowboys forever. Nobody coaches forever. And like, all of that stuff is true, but it comes across as like I said, it just kind of makes your eyebrows go up like, man, is Jerry putting somebody on notice here? What exactly is happening? So it was a very, very eventful day. I would love for you to go read it and let me know what you think.
Well, Dave, okay, with that being said then, should we have Dan Quinn as maybe the favorite over Sean Payton if he had to go get a coach?
I think it's too early to say that. I just think there's so many variables that go into that. I mean, he did come on y'all station last week and say like everything, like nothing's changing right now. Like I wasn't leaving Mike twisting in the wind. And obviously like this is another twist in that narrative. But it's not like again, nothing major is going to change before the 2022 season. Like this is what you're going with, I believe. And so there's just so many things that could change. I don't think you could say that, but like I said, I came out of interviewing Jerry Jones yesterday thinking like, man, I just kind of feel like he's trying to put people on notice and make people feel uncomfortable.
Let me ask you this real quick, Dave. Then, when you were talking to Jerry, did you get a lot different feeling in that setting as you did like after that? You know, when you heard him on with us and the post game stuff and all that. Is it a lot different vibe? Did he seem like he'd settled down, or what kind of read did you get on him on that?
Yeah, I would say like he wasn't he wasn't like angry or frustrated. I mean, he did talk about how he talked to us for a while about how, you know, he thinks you make your most growth when you're down at your lowest point, and he's talked a lot of times about wanting to rub salt in the wound and do a lot of soul searching. I still very much think he's, you know, trying to bounce back from that loss and see where do we go from here. But like, these weren't comments that sounded frustrated. Like I said, like, it was all very matter of fact. He's like, well, yeah, I mean, Mike's not going to be coach of the Cowboys forever. And I was like, yeah, that's true, but that's still kind of an interesting thing for you to say.
For Dan Quinn to feel like he'd have a good job of taking over, you'd have to have Jerry say something like Sean Payton's not as strong as candidate as people are reporting, wouldn't you? I mean, would you believe you have a shot right now if you're DQ?
I mean, I think all of that is up in the air with regard to how this team does. I mean, if they improve on what they did last year, probably not. But then that eliminates any other candidate as well. I mean, if the Cowboys, let's just say, like, they have just as successful a regular season and they actually put together a postseason run, again, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but if it does, then I think all of this stuff kind of drifts away into the ether. But the impression that I get is I think Jerry Jones feels comfortable with people speculating about the future. And maybe, like I said, maybe that is to try to
put some
spur people to give their best effort.
I like that. And heck, if you're Dan, you know, if the defense stays good and the team is underwhelming, maybe you miss the playoffs or you're out in the wild card and Sean wants to do TV, you'd be sitting there in the catbird seat much better than taking one of these jobs that's talent depleted. So I guess it is somewhat realistic. They had a meeting with Randy's agent. Did you get the feeling that Randy is one of the players they'll do what it takes to keep him?
I don't know if I'm ready to say do what it takes, because again, I mean, you're at the mercy of what somebody else is willing to do. I mean, if another team is willing to make him the highest paid end in the league, which, I mean, that would surprise me, but I think there's only so much you can do. But I will say he seemed to have a lot of confidence that they're on the same page there. I mean, and a lot of times, like, we've done this year after year with, like, DeMarcus Lawrence and Dak Prescott and Zeke Elliott, and a lot of times they won't even meet with these guys until Indianapolis at the Combine, or in a lot of cases, these conversations don't even ramp up until like the days before free agency. It's almost like a game of chicken. So for the team, for Jerry to be meeting with an agent as early as late January, I think that, reading the tea leaves, I think that gives an indication, again, that they're on the same page. So I would say I think Jerry's optimistic that with all of that mutual history between Randy and the organization, I just think that they're confident or at least very hopeful that they can work something out that benefits everybody.
When you said Kellen's still technically a candidate in Miami, do you get the feeling he's not a strong candidate?
The sense that I get from afar, and again, I don't cover the Miami Dolphins, but all of the stuff I hear is that they really like Mike McDaniel, the offensive coordinator out in San Francisco. So I mean, I don't get a sense that he's like a front runner, and Jerry has said a couple of times that he's optimistic Kellen will come back. But hey, never say never. I mean, it was all of the smoke in the world was leading us to Jim Harbaugh going to the Vikings, and then that fell apart in the span of like 2 hours last night, and it went from Jim Harbaugh's going to coach the Vikings to not only is he not, but they've hired their other guy. Like, that all happened in the span of like 3 hours yesterday. So I guess anything's possible, but I don't get the impression that Kellen's the favorite.